Okay.
Okay, so happy Sunday. Happy week 7 of the Writing a Good Life course. Hi, Brett and Brian. Hi, Josie
Hi.
and Mommels and Sean.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I have a couple things that I want to do in terms of just framing what I feel like is really important in terms of how this is designed. So just a couple minutes, and then we can talk a tiny bit, and then write, and then kind of reflect. Um, the one thing that I don't want to not say is that I feel like there's a power of time. I want to kind of revisit at the very beginning to talk about time and about structuring time and thinking about startings and endings. So if you remember when we started, there was like a question of like, what are we going to do with our time? How are we going to make this valuable? Who am I? What matters to me? What goals do I have? What might I want to do? And we kept on playing with those questions, and we wrote a contract like, I'm going to do this and do my best to do this for the next so often. There's a real power in beginnings, in that sense of like, we talked about that quote, like, whatever you dream, you can do, to begin it. Boldness has creativity, magic, and power within it, or something like that. That one, like,
Yeah.
just like begin. And I think the other side of this that's really important is the ending and the real celebration of the fact that this is impermanent and that we have an ending point that we can then reflect on and then figure out what we want to do with that. So it's like really important for me that we put this thing to bed, in the sense that we like say, this is done. Like, this time is done. And now we get to do two things. This is why this is my favorite session. So I'm really glad both of you could make it. We get to celebrate. One, like, what do we want to celebrate? Like, what do we want to like take from this time and be like, celebrate, rejoice about this that happened? And then kind of, what do we want to do moving forward? Like, what do we want to let go? So I think there's this process. I don't know if we've talked about this, Josie, and I don't even think we haven't talked about this enough. I'm fascinated with death and this process of like death and rebirth and like letting things go so that new things can be born. And I think
Right.
just from a learning standpoint, I really feel like it's really important to consider the beginnings and endings of any, and this is scalable too, of a learning venture. So I'm like, I'm going to take this amount of time to try this thing. And then when I hit the end point, I'm going to look and say, like, how did that go? You can do that with like a 5-minute writing exercise. I'm hitting the start, I'm writing, and I'm going to stop and look back. The 5 minutes are gone. What did I learn? How was that? Do I want to do a 7-minute exercise next time? Or you can be like 7 weeks, or 1 week, or 1 year.
Yeah.
Or like a moon, like new moon. It's another really powerful one to do. So the one piece that I just want to leave us with, if we're doing this, the focus of this week is on reflecting. And part of reflecting, I kind of want to say, is this process of closing, ending, dying, letting go, moving on. Does that framework make sense? Do we see like how that's, I just feel like in terms of the content of this course, this is a really important part. We started with unlearning, where we kind of opened, and then we kind of set some goals, and we like had a beginning. And then we went through this process. We faced some abysses. We got some kind of a boon, some kind of a benefit from this. And now we're looking at like how we can return that. And this last piece is that moving on, like celebrating where we've been piece as much as we can.
Okay. I got that.
What does any of that seem, how does that land? Does that seem like, does that seem right? Not right?
That seems right. I wrote down do you want us to write about this, or can I share my thoughts on that?
No, I do. I'm just a quick share, because the writing prompt is a little different than that. I just want to see like if this reflecting, and partially the reason why I'm asking is I love how, Mom, you've like there's a few things that I've said that you've like had your own spin on, where you're like, I don't know if that makes sense to me, which is one of the things I was celebrating before the class, is that like the project thing, the whole thing of like, I don't
Right.
know about the project language.
Right.
And that was really, so I don't know. I'm just wondering if the reflection language is working.
Well, I like the whole concept of lessons learned in any
Great. That's where we're
kind
going.
of thing, right?
Yes.
And you can reflect on the time period. Um, Yet at the same time, by designating it to happen this week, when I already figured out my schedule on when I'm getting done, right?
Aha.
My done point is not this week. My done point is next Monday. I still have 8 more days.
That's why I'm asking.
So that, therefore, I'm not going to look back until I get done. Done as in draft, right?
Fantastic. Because you're
Because
still doing
that's
your project and
well,
you're
yeah, I'm
and
still doing my other project. As far as,
fantastic.
that's an ongoing kind of thing, and I need to dedicate myself to those kind of things, right?
Fantastic.
Right. Um, and yeah. So anyway, but and I think I've already done that in some respects, as
Yes.
far as check in on what's working, what's not,
Yes.
and readjust the readjust the morning pages to go immediately into what I wanted to get done in the morning pages. That quiet time, I wanted to make the connections and get the input, and and so therefore, I've already thought, okay, so that, and it worked. So the point being is the realization that I came to this morning was that any kind of answer that get is an answer that's appropriate for that particular time.
Mm,
And it's not necessarily the correct answer for another point in time in the future.
mm,
Mm.
So, I
powerful.
can't go and try to find the ultimate truth,
Mm,
because the truth keeps on changing, right? And so that's um, so that therefore, yeah, check it out now, get the answer, go with that, right? But nothing. I mean, that's the flow of
yes.
being in the flow, and that's where I want to be.
Yeah, it's good. Um, I feel like my project was more so I kind of came to it with a more fluid attitude where I would celebrate if I did a good job at all of it, because the goals that I set for myself, I went pretty hardcore um in terms of like what I should be doing before I can scroll or do other things. And my background on my phone is the list
Mm,
of things that I should aim to do before I pick up my phone and do things. Go for a walk, spend time in nature, call a friend for lunch, read a book, journal, obviously, you know. And I noticed that I couldn't do all of those things in one day after work. I still wanted to listen to my body, and if I needed relaxation, I needed relaxation. So maybe I did, 4 out of the 10 things that day, but I would still celebrate the fact that I didn't do zero, if that makes sense.
totally.
Um, I saw a video. Well, I guess that doesn't really tie in, but um, in terms of the start and end, and like starts in general and ends in general, like as a plural, um, I feel like I'm always so terrified, not terrified. What's a word that is like terrified and excited?
Apprehensive.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, apprehensive. I'm always apprehensive of starts. Like my first day at camp, even though I've already worked there. That's a new tiny little segment of my life. The first day of school, I'm apprehensive. I'm excited, but I'm also extremely nervous. And then, you know, just like my fantasies about where I'm going to end up in life. I'm terrified of what I'm going to do, you know, next summer that I have completely off, and I want to travel all summer long. And I'm terrified of that. But then I think ends, like the end of something, always makes me so nostalgic and sad. Like the end of something good, or the end of something in general. Like, even if I hated the job, I still look back on it and go, oh, that was actually kind of like, you know, I did that, you know?
Yeah. And
What's I'm scared to start something new, but then I end up loving it. Otherwise, I wouldn't feel sad at the end. But I always feel sad at the end of things. The end of movies, the end of a week, the end of a job, the end of a class. Like when I was in dance, we would do like Christmas shows, and it was only just like a little thing, you know, that we would start in August and go until December. And when it was done, everybody cried. And I was like, we're 10 years old. What's like, just the end of something always feels really sad. But the start is really exciting, but also so, I feel like it's so hard for me to take on more starts. So that's what I was also writing down for what we should celebrate. What I'm celebrating for myself is the fact that I stepped out of my comfort zone and took this class in the first place.
yes.
I just felt very adulty by doing so. And
Oh,
I was just like, wow, I'm like spending my own money that I've made on something that's going to benefit me and a professor who I adored.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So it was like, it just seemed like a really awesome thing to do. Yeah, Brett's here now. Or Brian, who just joined.
That's Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So, yeah, I'm celebrating the fact that I did something that I don't think a lot of people my age do, especially right out of college.
I'm very glad. Brian, I will do in the parlance of Clubhouse, we'll do a kind of a reset to get us all back on the same page. Welcome,
Thank you.
Brian. I started out kind of really thinking about beginnings and endings and the power of reflection and how the endings of things provide an opportunity to reflect. Terry kind of shared that she's not done yet. Her ending point is on Monday of next week. I guess that detail isn't important, but that she's not yet at the point where she's like actually done looking back. She's still working on her project for another set amount of time. So she's still kind of in the flow and in the process. She shared really revealingly, and I'm glad I got a chance to say this again because it seems directly relevant to your share, Josie, that she got the realization that the guidance she's getting in this day is more for this day and not necessarily for other times as well. So you can't necessarily, Josie, figure out what you're doing next summer and get accurate guidance on that because too many things could change before now and then. And it's more of like being comfortable with the uncertainty of like where you are now and like making the most out of where you are now and doing those one little tiny things. So in the context, and still that being said, Terry kind of confirmed with me that having a space to really provide, giving ourselves deliberate time to think, what lessons did I learn? And how can I use this unit of time to reflect back? And I'm using two kind of frameworks here. One for reflection, one celebrating. What do I have to celebrate here? What can we really like rejoice about? That's why I love this session a lot, because it makes me feel like we did something. Like you all took a risk to be here. We did something. That's worth celebrating for me. So I feel very celebratory. What was the other piece? Maybe that's the only one that's important. Oh, right. No. How are we moving forward? So it's like celebrating where we've been, and then kind of really, oftentimes a celebration connects to how we're moving forward. So that's the big framework, and we were just kind of getting a sense of how this sense of beginnings and endings and celebrating and moving forward, how that looks for us, and that idea of making more starts, doing more starts, and stepping out of the comfort zone to grow that Josie just said. I mean, I'm just thinking about natural units of time are really powerful ways to do that. So like at the end of the day, Ben Franklin, we didn't talk about this. Ben Franklin at the beginning of the day wrote in his journal, "What good can I do today?" And then he would respond. And then at the end of the day, he would write, "What good did I do today?" And then he would reflect. So you got a natural unit of time that's like, what can I do that's good today? From Brian's language, how can I make the world better? Practice my amelioration. And then what did I do? How can I make and Josie, you celebrating those little tiny wins, not like, well, I didn't do the 10 things I could do, but I did one of them. That's so much in line with where I feel like just the empowering. I want this course to be empowering moving forward in your learning. And this reflexive move is the last one that we're going to do, that also is like the key to iterating this as you go forward. So Josie, if you want to create a new start, just remember to give yourself an end so that you can reflect back on it. And it's not this big, giant, daunting thing. It's just like 25 minutes or 3 weeks or 2 months. I'm going to give myself 6 weeks to do this work. And that means I can give myself this much each day to do that work. That kind of a thing, which is basically what we've done in the workshop, more or less, the structure of it.
Yeah.
Nice. So that's my review. And I actually think it's a good time to just move into the writing in the pages with those prompts, which is, what lessons did we learn? What do we want to celebrate? Josie, you already kind of did that, but that's kind of where my questions are. What did we learn? What do we want to celebrate? Which is also another way of asking, what do we want to take with us, or what kinds of practices, tools, ideas do we want to not forget, if any? I just want to leave this all behind. I won't be offended. It's so be honest. This is not quite over yet, but okay. Anyway, sorry. Okay, I need to be quiet here. Let's go for about 13 minutes. What can we celebrate?
Oops, yes. Okay.
Okay, I think that's about 14 minutes. If you want to kind of wrap up what you're writing, we will have another little bit of time. If you're working on the what we're going to take with us, there's another exercise that I want to do that's kind of fun and more of like a lightning round on that. Okay. Does anybody want to share? Brian. Oh yeah. Oh, I see.
Just doing the countdown. I was ready.
Okay.
So when I got to one, I'd go. So this has been an incredible week for me. I took my kids
Awesome.
to Washington, D.C. And are you hearing me?
You're a little quiet.
Okay. Let me lean forward and see if that helps at all. Is that any better?
It is.
All right. So it was a great week because I took my kids around DC to see the luminary minds etched in stone. Imagine if a sentence of yours was so inspiring to a group of people that they put it in marble for millions of people to witness for as long as possible. That's the power of words. And I want to just acknowledge you, Sean, for making this possible to deepen our reflection about these words so that we can become more powerful. Because when we reflect, what we're doing is we are honing the power of our minds. And I think the only crucible outside of, war, pestilence, and life, the hardest of knocks, the safest way to enter into the crucible is through the crucible of reflection. And writing and journaling, I think, is the safest space to do this kind of work. FDR faced the tragedy of the Depression, and all of the people that he knew and was responsible for were, wrestling with poverty, except for the few people that owned rail stations and things like that. So he tried to take power away from the most powerful, distribute that wealth to a larger group of people that were truly in major suffering. They didn't have food to eat, they didn't have jobs, they didn't have security. And he used the power of his words over the radio to inspire people to keep going, to help out their neighbors with kindness and things like that. But he wasn't alone. He had Eleanor. And I think Eleanor is often, underappreciated in the world. But without her, I think FDR would have been like next to nothing. I think that their dialogue sharpened each other. Eleanor had just as much of a mind as FDR did, and their back and forth made them super strong. I learned that Eleanor was the first diplomat of the United Nations, and that was inspiring to learn. Ben Franklin, who you just mentioned, was also an ambassador. And I think that when you hone your ideas, one of the things is that you do become an ambassador of a better way of thinking. And I think that what I'd like to begin to celebrate as my strength is that I seek out the coins of darkness, and they're lying all around us, and people are always pointing to these coins. And it is my role to turn them over so that you can see the light on the other side. I met a woman the other day who was talking about how people are just insane. They're not wearing masks. They don't care about people with the compromised immunities and things like that. And I told her a story about being on an airplane and how just the mere act of helping someone, get their suitcase out for them with a moment of kindness and a couple of words created a wave of kindness that followed me, for, throughout the airplane. It's like we want to be kind, we want to be better. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of kindness to start a wave. So I think that that's kind of one of the things that I want to celebrate in my beginnings, and thinking about how can I do more of what I'm great at. And I think a part of it is giving myself permission to not be great, because we all are beginning this. I mean, every day is a new beginning. And that feeling of uncertainty is perfect. I want to surround myself with uncertain, doubtful people who've been wounded and hurt, feel weird and awkward, and still make an effort to make things better anyway. And I've realized that, I want to be around lonely, strange weirdos because they're the ones who I think who can make the biggest difference in our world. And and that's where I'm going to start is with finding a few who are like-minded, who want to make a small difference, and do my best to protect them from, you know, what I consider to be evil, and give them a little bit of a buffer between the evils of the world so that they can be great. And if I can inspire greatness and create ideas, concepts, actions, and words that are worthy of being inscribed in stone, then yeah, woohoo. But even if I don't, even if it's just the fact that I played a game of Dungeons and Dragons with my kids and they had the focus to actually play the game in a world littered with distraction, that they spent a few hours with me engaging in imagination, you know, I can celebrate that too because being a father, giving your kids the ability to concentrate and imagine, I think is a wonderful gift to share. To be able to engage with other minds and play and imagination, it's a powerful place to be. So that's another thing I'm celebrating. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you.
Okay. Hi. Um,
Please.
that's really very close to what I was writing down too. I think one of my main takeaway out of so many from this class was that it's so important to practice discussing your theories with anybody. We are very privileged in this I don't know, classroom to have like-minded people, I would assume, you know. But it's so important to keep an open mind, and I think that the people that yearn to discuss their theories on society and their theories on religion and their theories on ABCD, that I think is what's going to make more of a push, domino effect, butterfly effect, whatever you want to call it. The more people that are practicing discussing with people, what did I say? You're pushing yourself so much further than anyone else, and it's less about changing people's minds and more about being open-minded enough to gain a new perspective that benefits you and your amount of knowledge. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, keep on going.
But the other cool thing too is that, and this was what Terry was kind of talking about, is that that's my theory for today. So my theory could be completely different tomorrow, but that's my theory for right now, is that I think that it's just really important to find situations in life that you can keep discussing and keep talking about things like that. So that's my takeaway from the class, is that one of them is that I want to continue to yearn for that push to keep discussing and push to keep being open-minded, but also understanding that no two ideas are the same. Even if I agree completely with somebody, I'm still looking at it in my brain. I'm still imagining a completely different look, a completely different scene than the other person who also agrees with me, because they aren't looking through my eyes. And certain things haven't stuck with them the same way. But we still are agreeing on the same idea, but we're seeing it differently. It's not kind of trippy. I don't know.
There's so much. I mean, when you said it's important to discuss our theories with anybody, like how you use the word theories at first, and then you kind of went into being open-minded in our perspectives, and then realizing like how you're framing it today might not be the way you're framing it like another day. Like you're actually practicing open-mindedness not only in conversations with other people, but also kind of in conversation with yourself over time. so that like you're aware that like it might be different a little bit, and like having that openness and flexibility to keep on like developing really as a person, especially with that last piece about it's not like it's like different people have different ways of seeing ideas, and really embracing that
Yeah.
is like that's kind of what philosophy is in a lot of ways, at least the traditional philosophy. We have these ideas, and then different people in discussion relate to those ideas and articulate them.
Yeah.
So I think
And
that it's really powerful. I mean, the conversational piece and the growth piece seems really, really huge.
and I'll end with, and doesn't that just make you feel so much more like free and so much more
Yes.
calm that you don't have to have it figured out for your life. You just have to have it figured out for today, because it's going to change anyway. So it's like, like that is like my biggest thing. I feel like I went into this class being like, I need answers to questions so that I can have this power to live for the rest of my life on one plane. Like, I just want to have it figured out already. And now my perspective is, I have it figured out for today, and then tomorrow we'll figure it out. I don't got to worry about that yet. You know, I mean, it's nice to have things figured out in advance, like,
Travel plans, maybe.
yeah, sure. Or, you know, where am I going to work? I just put my 2 weeks in. I should probably have a job here, you know, soon or something. You know,
Yes.
different experiences. But I've let go of a lot of that. I need security right now. I need security right now. I need security right now. I've let go of a lot of that and just going, oh, shoot, I could just wait till tomorrow. Have it figured out then. It's going to change anyway. And that's okay.
Awesome.
It's strange. You know, I've been influenced by some amazing atheists, and what you were just talking about, Josie, is faith. The faith that somehow it'll kind of work out. We're not sure how, and what I use to define that is I call it a traveler's miracle. I don't know how I'm going to get my next meal. I don't know how I'm going to find a place to sleep. You know, I mean, I literally traveled around the world, and you know, most days I didn't know where I would be sleeping that night, or where I'd be eating, or how I would do anything, or what I would see. But somehow I would be guided and find something that inspired me and led my heart to do something more. And I think that what you're getting at is that when you embrace that creative questioning and hold space for the possibility, it will take you to a place where you can have a better vantage point. Just like climbing a mountain, you know, when you turn around, you get a different sense of where you came from,
Yeah.
because you're looking at it from a different angle.
Great. I'm reading a book
So good.
called You Are a Badass.
Nice.
And I'm only on chapter 3, but the first chapter was about living in the present.
Yeah.
And the second chapter is called The G Word. Because she's like, I read so many books about God, you know, and it's always from a different perspective of Catholic or Buddhist, or, you know, whatever that means to you. But that's the thing, it's whatever that means to you. So when you said faith, my my phone's falling. My immediate reaction is, oh no, I grew up in a Catholic school, and I'm having my moment of discernment, I think, you know, just kind of trying to decide what's right for me and what I believe right now. And so faith, when people say faith, it always makes me think, oh, you mean like going to mass every Sunday, and oh, like eating the body and blood of Christ, because that's what I was raised on. But that's not what the definition of faith is not Catholic faith. It's just that knowing what is going to guide you. And that could be the universe. That could be the, you know, that could be Jesus. That could be anything. That's what the whole chapter is talking about, is like, there's so many different words for it. You don't have to use God. You can use, you know, and so that's like, now it's bringing me back full circle to now where I'm like, I grew up in it and I was, you know, religious, and then I fell out of it, and now I'm like coming back to it, but with a brand new idea and perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
I don't know.
No, I think it's
And that's
interesting
okay.
too. There's another word that's trust too. That
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a good word too.
in my Buddhist teacher at CSU was, you know, saying that the better translation in Buddhism is not necessarily a faith because of the baggage with that term, but a trust that's born out of experiential knowledge. That's the bit. The Buddha
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
want us to believe anything without having the experiential confirmation to back it up. So when we feel a communion or connection, that engenders for future trust. Or when you open your pages and are like, what guidance do I need? And then all of a sudden you just get this amazing guidance. It's no longer really faith that you'll get the guidance. It's kind of like a trust in it because you've seen it work
Yeah.
before. So that might be a less loaded word, but
Yeah.
True. Good,
Definitely.
good clarification. Thank you.
but it's, I mean, to your point, there's like a lot of different ways to think about that. That's just like one person's like wrestling with, should we translate this Buddhist term as faith or trust? And then it's like, actually, there's an experiential component of trust that's really important, I think.
Yeah.
So much. I love a lot of that, a lot. I remembered there's a Gandhi quote, something, learn as if you'll live forever, live as if you'll die tomorrow, or something like that. Like we're like learning. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I'll pass on that. Mama, any thoughts?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything that's being said, I totally resonate with. I like Josie's different. Everyone sees it slightly different. And, you know, even just visually, we're located in slightly different spots. You know, I mean, you know, and you know, that's real trippy when you realize that, you know, we are seeing it different as well. So, and also this whole concept of flying or going to the top of the mountain and seeing a broader perspective of things is very nice. So, and I do feel like this experience has given me the trust that I can easily make the energy connections and get the guidance that from multiple sources that I wasn't sure that, I mean, I had experienced it, but yet at the same time, now I know that it's there, and I've just been experiencing that and loving it. And it was I did get an experience on writing a memoir kind of thing. That was what the project kind of turned out to be. And you know, so you know, just an experience of, okay, this is what it feels like. I'm not sure I want to go into that headspace. You know, I mean, it's okay. I'll finish it, but yet at the same time, I'm more into being in the now and not doing and looking back. I mean, you know, there are things, but I also recognized the importance of learning from the past too. So, I mean, there will be still some, you know, looking back a little bit, um, but at the same time, I would much prefer to be getting the guidance and applying that guidance and living and experiencing, and you know, as I move forward with where I'm at now. So that's all that. And then the last is where I started out, that the project, didn't like the concept of a project. I still don't like the concept of a project. And primarily because I think what I battled against all along is that it takes away for me the creativity, and I need to somehow be ingesting creativity in some sort of way of, you know,
so that it is creative, it is expressive, it is flowing. And when they're, you know, so that was the battle that I had in that whole area. And, you know, I didn't want it to be stiff and, you know, oh, okay, I accomplished this or I did this. I even tried doing little things that, you know, but it just didn't work. I mean, it made it too structured and too analytic, and it moved me away from the creativity part. So.
When you were talking, a question came up for me. And I remember how Sean started this.
Right.
He started this whole course with a caveat. And it was, I am not the teacher.
Right.
And I realized that all of my life, I've been afraid of being who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, you know, like, I haven't published a book. I've always wanted to be a published author.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what is freaking holding me back from, you know, yeah, I've written hundreds of introductions. I have, you know, probably thousands of pages of notes, false starts, outlines, you know, conclusions, you know, I just all over the place. I have 16 URLs that I own for potential different angles I could have taken on this. Now I did publish a children's book and send it off and have a copyright on it. But I wanted my daughter to illustrate it, and she never wanted to get, you know, she never wanted to do the artistry.
Oh, that's great.
So it's not published.
Right.
So it's like, so I'm thinking about, and I just want to ask the question. I don't want the answer, because I wrote out my caveat. It's like, what caveat could I put in the beginning of the book that would give me the freedom to be ugly? To really just get at the ugly truth. Because the truth is there's a lot wrong with the world. There's even more wrong with me. And I don't have it figured out. But I need to put this on paper, because if I don't, maybe nobody will. And so, you know, what do I need to say to be me? In a way that's wholesome, uplifting, you know, inspiring, but also, you know, filled with faults and you know, foibles and blunders and, you know, bumps. So I thought that might be an interesting question to think about. You know, what could I put as an introduction that would release this inner pressure I put on myself to kind of elevate and be at like a higher level, so that I could just be me and talk.
Right.
You have a great way of speaking, Brian. Your language really is. So, I mean, I would really encourage you to do that.
Put that in writing. The way that you speak, right?
Yep.
And flow it that way.
Yep.
Then that would be very moving. Instead of applying the writing knowledge that, I mean, I always get stuck on that. You know, can't use the word that, and all that other kind of stuff. Is stop. But just go with that free flow. And
I love the suggestion. Thank you.
And I love the idea of your daughter or a child illustrating a book. That is great. I love children's art. I just think it's the best. It's so expressive.
Kids' art is honestly just so unintentionally. It's just it comes from such a different brain than an adult.
and it's perfect. Yeah.
They see things, I would say, brighter than we do, but they don't know how to convey it realistically, and so it is the epitome of abstract expression.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
I mean, and the best part is they don't even know it. They
Right.
just drew a car.
Yes.
And they're like, yeah, I just drew my dad's car. And I'm looking at it like, that is so weird and goofy and like, wow, you don't even know what you just did.
Yes.
Like, adults try to do that.
Right.
Adults try
Yes.
to get to it, and kids who we don't think we can learn from do it so effortlessly.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yep.
I mean, it is my job, so I could go off on this for a while, but I will save it.
I'm glad you appreciate that since it is your job. And they're and yeah, let them color outside of the lines.
Honestly.
You said
Yeah.
the epitome is that they don't even know it,
Mm-hmm.
which
The
and
best
connected,
part, yeah.
to Brian's point that trying to play with, what caveat could I give myself that allows me to get out of my head so that I no longer know it, whether or not what I'm doing is worth it, if it will be a success in the marketplace.
Right.
All of those things are completely gone, and it's, oh, this is fun,
Yeah, right.
right? Or this is just
Yeah.
who I am.
Or honest and who
Or
I
honest,
am.
or I don't know.
Right,
I don't
yeah,
know.
right, yeah.
Who knows what it is at that point? For me, this is fun
Yeah.
Right.
because it is going to be different for
Right.
everybody.
And people are going to perceive it differently. So it can't be so perfect if it's too perfect to you, it might not be perfect for, some other person.
It's really
You
interesting with a lot
just
of,
gotta be genuine.
yep. And I mean, I'm thinking about music production too, because it's really interesting metaphor because you do have to get a lot in line to be able to make the recording work. There's like a lot of moving pieces. But if you're not showing up authentically, you're not going to be able to get a good recording anyway. It's like you have to be able to think carefully about how can I set this situation up so that the people involved feel good enough to be able to show up
Mhm.
as well as they can. And when it's you writing a book, it's also like your point, Brian, how can I set this up so that all the people involved
Are
can
authentic.
feel okay doing what they're doing,
Mhm. Right.
right? And then it is like, I am not the teacher. I mean, I'm the teacher of my own experience, and I'm here to learn. I'm the
Right.
teacher by way of my lead learner. I'm the lead learner, but that's it. And honestly, you're the lead learner. We're all just kind of, and I do think, I mean, this is a good place for me to just kind of give my, anything else? Anybody want to say anything else?
Good.
I'm
Okay.
ready to hear.
Yeah, I'm ready to listen.
Well, I mean, I think on the teacherly move that I want to make is that I think a good teacher sees people. I play in a band called the Seers, and there's a sense of, and I don't want to say like I'm seeing into you, but I'm seeing I'm seeing you from my vantage point. I love that piece. Like we're not even in the same visual, like we're seeing things differently. So when I'm thinking about like what I wanted to celebrate and what I got when I did the celebration exercise before class started to kind of ground myself in the work that we're doing. And I got that, I really celebrate the uniqueness of this particular group of people and how every single person did something interesting for me. So Brian, I'll just start with you. Your project of amelioration, of making things better, I'm going to remember that and the vibe of trying to make things better. And I also remembered the conversation we had about how dangerous that viewpoint is. If I'm always trying to make something better, I might try to fix something I might try to fix something uncomfortable that's actually holding a really big lesson for me, or it might take me out of what's in the moment. So instead of, I'm like trying to make this better to the extent that I'm like lost a little bit, but still like that I don't experience it that way. I just remember that conversation. I experience in this heart space, and this like, I just want to make this better. I want to inspire. And the way you show up in this classroom where you're just like, all right, here I am. I'm ready to make it better for people. No, you go, like that's just what you do. That's how I experienced you from the first time I experienced you, and why I reached out to you saying, hey, I think you would actually make this course better. And you were like, okay, I'm in. There was no like, you were just like, you think I can make it better? Well,
I'm there.
Like, I'm there. And I won't, and, oh, by the way, do you need to get off the phone? Okay, bye. You know, it was like just that whole thing. So, and so I really want to celebrate that. So celebrate
And
what Brian did for me.
just from that, I feel seen. Thank you.
All right. Um, I also, for Brett, who's not here, is kind of a parallel. Brett's enthusiasm for, hi Brett, if you're watching this, your enthusiasm for wanting to do the course at the beginning and being the first scholarship recipient, someone that was like, I want to take the course, but I don't have the money, and what do I need to do? And was super excited and into it. Formal, like, I appreciate Brett's excitement and like how he approached it reminded me like a kid, and this kind of really inspired me to continue on in my journey and really like enjoy this process, like how he enjoyed this process, how he enjoyed the process of making music, and how he talked to me about, oh, you make music, that whole vibe about that. And I'm like, yeah, it's something that I do. And he's like, that's amazing, don't you really enjoy that? And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do. You know what I mean? Like, I really appreciated that that excitement that I felt, and it was palpable, and that kind of, it blended into a seriousness as well. There's like an excitement but a seriousness of like wanting to do that. That was really inspiring for me. Connected, Josie, you had that same kind of energy that I really appreciate. And for you, I was glad about the vulnerability and the honesty that you have, which you always had in the class as well. Like, you're just yourself, and you're just like, this is what's going on. And I'm also, there's like a risk taking that goes along with that, where you're like, and you said it at the beginning, which is like, I'm gonna do this. Like, okay, like let's this sounds like an opportunity for me to learn, sounds like an opportunity to grow. I'm okay, let's do it. Which I don't think a lot of people have. I think most people are kind of just like on the, oh, okay, just, but I don't know, that's not even really important. It's just that you were like honest and vulnerable about the Sunday scaries and how you're like, this is tough for me. And what that did for the dynamic and your risk taking and just like your honesty. I'm also very glad that you're working with kids and kids art. I told you that before. It's obviously why I wrote the letter of recommendation and all of that, is I think you're perfect for that because of how you are in the world. And so it was really cool. I also, just the whole metaphor of you working with kids and kids art and what that means to this container is also something that I'm gonna not work with, but reflect on and keep. So bravo.
Thank you. That was
Bravo
very nice of you.
on the vulnerability and the honesty.
Thank you. I'll keep doing it.
way to be unabashedly Josie. And then definitely there's the longest section was for mom, because there's a lot going into this one, but there's two big ones. One is the power of nurturing and the kind of like support, and how often that kind of is almost unstated, but it's just like there. It's almost like given that you're being supported for what you're, and I feel really fortunate and basically having that to kind of fall back on. But I feel like a lot of basically nurturance and education came up again for me a lot. So it's like, I feel okay taking risks, and I feel supported in the risks that I'm taking because there is that foundation of love and like support of who I am. And so that came up to me again, which is interesting. Having this in an educational space, it's not like I felt like you were like supporting me in what I'm doing, which you directly are. It's not how I experienced it. It was more like, it's just like kind of like a confirmation of these little energetic moves that like that there's a nurturance, and the connection of nurturance and energy was really significant and came up really strongly. But then that connected to, like, what does a mother want for their kid? They want them to be happy and to live a good life. Like and so it was like, for me, your presence in the course helped me dial back like my ambitions around the project and really reground it in just like more play and enjoyment. And iteration of like, right, you can it's like a remembering, like you can play with this, you can do something completely playful, like you're the one doing all this, why not have like a really good time with it? Like, why are you putting your pressure on, why, you know? So there's like a creative agency and a presence that is really supportive, and this giant reminder to just really enjoy myself and enjoy the process, that really deepened throughout the course. But the cumulative effect of that has been really, really profound in a way that I feel different now than I did at the beginning of the course, because I think your general energy with how you approach the course also, where you're just like, fuck projects, that's a terrible idea, which I was like, oh, that's cool. Or, you know, like, oh, that's kind of the whole point of the course, but those are exactly the kind of students I like. So let's actually, maybe I should, should that be the center of the course? Maybe I need a bigger caveat there. That's amazing. And then, you know, the whole, again, it's like, well, what's your weekly goals? I don't know. I'll tell you what my goal tomorrow is tomorrow. Okay. Well, that's okay. Like, I just appreciate that kind of like, and I don't know, you know this, but like the stories of, I've heard stories of my mom being an young philosophy undergrad and really just calling her teachers out, like really calling them out for all kinds of things, I imagine. So it was really nice for me to have that experience. But
That's awesome. I want to hear all of those stories.
what's the one that, like, the professor that said that they only give multiple answer tests or multiple choice tests, and you refuse to take a multiple choice test? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, that was in the computer science.
Who
right.
refuses to take a multiple choice exam? And then didn't you prove to him that?
Well, because I didn't think they knew how to write logically the multiple choices, and so so then he said I didn't have to answer anything that I thought was illogically worded, and if I could prove to him that it was not logically worded. And
on the assumption that you wouldn't be able to. He was basically like,
oh,
you
yeah.
proved.
And
he was like, oh,
there were so many. There were
of course,
so many.
my logic is perfect. You won't find anything wrong with my exams.
Right, and in computer science, you'd think that he would know better, but but
listen to this.
He didn't. And but yeah, but the bad thing was though that by the time that was in Fortran, and when I went in there, I had been studying Pascal and I forgot Fortran totally by the time I went into his exam. And so I had to go up and ask him, well, on the other questions, can I answer it in Pascal instead of Fortran? and he let me still enter it in another language because I totally spaced out. But anyway.
And then you actually had a professional contact from him after, was he?
I actually ended up working for him in after school for a couple of years. Designed a whole bunch of different systems. Yep.
Hey, can we unpack what's happening right here, right now? I mean, this is so rich. One, there's a huge value in conflict that is often overlooked, right? So one, sometimes having the courage to conflict with authority is a powerful, powerful tool.
Yes.
The other, Sean, you were talking about seeing, you know, like this, you know, the witnessing of. Now, you and your mom have a history, and to be able to put that history aside and create an in the moment awareness, and you realizing, you know, the character of your mom, and in some ways welcoming a harsh criticism about your class being about projects and goals, and having that, like, just like getting the big middle finger on that, and you going, you know what, let me take that in, because it's so easy to invest our egos into our insights and aha moments. I mean, you had so many wows about the power of projects and the power of goals. It's like, these are ideas worth defending. And yet you held enough space to say, you know what? My mom confronted authority with wisdom and integrity. And how can I benefit from this? And you had an insight.
Yeah.
I like the people that confront authority.
Yeah.
And I also like the people that don't like projects. So how can I
Yeah.
redesign this to enhance so
Yeah.
that I get more of that? So I just wanted to really capture this because it was a beautiful moment. So thank you.
No, I'm glad you did, because that also helps me, again, way to make it better. That helps me really, my goal in creating this course was to make it as to allow different learners to bring their own experience to it. And I thought my container was like pretty darn wide, and then here it's like, actually, no. And then that happened on wayfinding too. When we did the wayfinding section this course,
Yes.
the woman on Clubhouse was like, well, wayfinding is a terrible metaphor for a lot of people. Like, the whole idea that you're having to go somewhere can be crippling for a lot of people. And actually, they might just actually be rooted in cultivating a garden. Don't wayfind, just grow a garden. And I'm like, oh, well, right. We really, which is a good transition to the kind of the final thing. The language that we use. So big key takeaway on yours as well, Brian. The language that we use is a powerful framer of our experience, which is where writing and the good life come together. That's where I was excited about this, right? And I mean, the third one, Mom, that I didn't get to was your sense of connection and the connection with nature, and that the connection with the mysteries of nature. I didn't tell you when I was talking, the other day when I was talking with you on the phone.
You are connected.
I was pretty connected. I went to Santa Fe and had an amazing time in Santa Fe, made a connection with St. Francis of Assisi, and was like in the peace that surpasses understanding. Thinking about like time, and like the wisdom workshop could completely fail, could completely succeed. My band could completely fail, completely succeed. Anything could happen. My culture could be slowly annihilated by a colonial force over hundreds of years. Like all these, like there's literally very big things going on, right?
Yes.
And where's the peace that surpasses all of that you're just like on it, right? So I'm connected to St. Francis. I'm talking to my mom on the phone. And as I'm talking with her, she's talking about this training she just had with the Peruvian shamans, connecting with people in the stars. And like I'm connecting with this like energy, and a bird came. I was wearing a ball cap. A bird came and landed on my head. A little songbird. I was telling Jonathan this the other day. I was like,
I've stayed there for a while.
It stayed there. I'm like, oh my God, a bird is on my head right now. Mom's like, oh, really? What? And I'm like, yeah, nope, it's still up there. And then now it's singing to its friend in the tree. And they're like having a dialogue. And I'm just like, whoa, this is crazy. A bird is like on my crown chakra right now. This is wild. And I told Jonathan that I was like, I've never had a bird land on my head before. And Jonathan's like, I don't think many people have, bro.
That's funny.
So that was the last thing. Thanks for the support, Mom, and
St.
thanks.
Francis was, sorry. Oh my
No,
gosh.
you're good. You're good, Josie. You're good.
St. Francis was my confirmation saint.
Whoa.
Oh wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
He was my mom's favorite saint. This is my phone keeps going. My mom's favorite saint growing up. She had St. Francis statues everywhere.
Very mystical.
And
Cool connection.
And yeah, when it came time to be confirmed my sophomore year of high school, I did St. Francis. So my confirmation name is Josephine Rance Francis Johnson.
Very
So that's a cool
Interesting.
connection.
Also
Yeah.
cool with the conversation about Catholicism and whether or not like you can, what parts of Catholicism you can leave and what parts you want to take with you. So obviously St. Francis is a pretty powerful like energy presence. So
you were
cool.
thanking your mom and then I interrupted. That's why I felt.
No, I'm glad you did. And
I wrapped it up good.
Yeah, and so thank you all for being here. And just because the last thing for our notes is this idea of values. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, actually, I'm going to trust it. Values that are verbs. and that verbs are certain kinds of tools. So we've got values, verbs, as, this is all like equals. Values equals verbs equals tools. And these different verbs that we do are like different tools that we're using in the wisdom workshop. I want to ask you, what verbs do you want to do more of? Now, interestingly, the one that comes up for me loudest that I hear a lot of people say is free writing. Not just writing, but free writing as a verb.
Oh,
But I'm wondering.
I thought it would be love.
Okay, well, there you go. Okay, so that's why
Right.
loving, and let's put them in the ing. Let's put them in the gerund, which is the ing version of the verb. Which, interestingly, on the chapter of God, Josie, one of my favorite I can't remember which theologian, said that God is a verb, but an ing verb. It's always an active process. So it's not, his thing was, you've heard that God is love. Well, that's not actually quite right, because God is not a noun. God is loving. God is the process of giving and receiving love.
Yeah.
It's an ing. So I want to ask us, like, quick lightning rapid round as a way of saying farewell. What are those verbs? We got free writing and loving. What other verbs are coming up for us?
The verb that came up from. Sorry, you go, Brian.
I just said acting.
Acting. Interesting.
Mine was letting go. So
Ooh.
Would releasing work?
Yes.
releasing. There we go.
No,
Synonyms are also
honestly,
good.
we don't just get one. We get a whole tool belt. So we can like throw our
Yeah.
verbs in our tool belt. So I've got letting go, learning. Thank you. Keep them coming.
Listening.
Dreaming and
Ooh.
playing.
Say that again, Brian.
Dreaming and playing.
Dreaming and playing.
Practicing.
Practicing. Excellent one. So good. Reflecting.
Engaging, appreciating, and living.
Oh, yeah.
It's a big
like
one.
this, yeah.
The last one especially. How does one living? Isn't that like that's the whole question of this course? Any other ones that are coming up before we close? I've got wayfinding again, and in the sense that I want to put synchronicity or serendipitying as a verb, but I don't know how to do that. But I was one of the ones that I wanted to carry forward of, okay, paying attention.
Experiencing was what was coming, right.
Experiencing.
Yeah.
So feeling, getting into that somatic experience. So feeling.
I was going to say breathing.
Whoa!
Yes.
That's a good one. Which connects with feeling the somatic experience.
Well, it also kind of connects with living.
Yes.
Right.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But I feel like breathing is less broad. You can focus that verb down to an act of breathing.
Ooh, I got resetting posture. We didn't talk about that, but as I breathe, I'm thinking, breathe. Moving is a good one. So what I'm going to send the reflecting. Any other ones?
Discussing,
conversing. I love that.
Connecting.
Yes.
connecting. Good one.
Calling.
Yeah. Asking
For help.
Did we already say, we said something like that though, didn't we?
Listening.
Doesn't matter. Sometimes.
But it doesn't
repeating-
matter.
Yeah,
Right.
just hitting it from a couple different angles deepens the experience of
Deepening.
living.
Deepening.
And so then I wanted to say praying again.
Whoa.
I have, again, with the word faith, that's a loaded word because of my past with Catholicism, but I don't think praying has to be a Catholic thing, obviously.
No, I would say not.
But that's what I was saying, asking, is because when I used to pray, it was more of an asking or giving thanks or something, you know.
Right.
Giving
But
thanks.
both of those can be brought down to praying to whatever you need, you know,
Mhm.
or to whoever. So I would say praying, but not in the way that I grew up with praying.
It's great. Praying my own way.
Yeah.
Thinking about hard times, I'm thinking about
Thinking.
accepting, overcoming, dealing,
Revealing.
revealing. Oh, I like
Ooh. As part of the overcoming. It's like when it's revealed, there's a revealing which also entails an overcoming. Because now we're actually seeing the thing for more of what it is, or potentially what it is.
And
Or
you
the
just
other
said
side of the
seeing.
coin.
Or the other side of the coin. Flipping.
Flipping.
Right.
So I just wanted to, this is kind of a newer final exercise based on, I just think this is a good way to actually revisit and reprioritize and kind of check in with where we are and what it means to live a good life. I think there is a living, and it's an active thing that we're doing. I also want to say that I'm going to be, the email thread that we have is live. So I wanted to see how everybody felt about occasional, if we think of the group, or we think of someone in the group, if it's okay to send an email to people. Is that okay?
Yes.
Please.
Yes, please.
Okay,
I
and then,
encourage it.
okay, great. And so I will, as much as I am able, and if things come up that makes me think of the group, which sometimes they do and they're random, I'll send that along without feeling like I'm imposing. And then I'll also we'll have other future kind of social ice cream socials, more or less, where we're able to kind of connect mind serendipity, share our growth. The last thing I'll say is that remember that this course is meant to be like, the entire course is meant to be iterative, in the sense that you should be able to do this for any duration and in any way at any time with any group that you want. So try to make it so this is just a 7 weeks in learning how to do something. Or not even learning how to do something. It's just like a learning and reflecting, philosophizing process. So if you wanted to do it again, sign a new contract with a new start date, new daily and weekly goals, new ideas, new recalibration of your compass. Why are you doing this? Where are you going? New set of paying attention to what's going around you, new designs that come out of that, new connections that come out of those designs, new collaborations that come out of those connections, and then new complete and utter failures, which are fantastic because that's what you hoped for in the beginning, because you know that it was just a learning opportunity to be able to learn. Or maybe not. Maybe the word failure doesn't really apply here, which is a good way to think about failure immunity. You're immune to the failure because you're not trying to succeed. You're just trying to learn as you move forward. So and then just feel free to reach out to me. That's part of the deal with the early, I am looking for help building this. So if there's a way that you think like, oh, this might help Sean, please reach out. And then if I can help you, there's the lifetime office hours, in the sense that I'm around. So if you want to meet, or if you want a perspective on something, that's my favorite thing. One of my favorite things to do is talk on the phone about perspectives, and maybe have birds land on my head.
Awesome.
Oh, man.
Okay, well, good group. I want to be mindful of time, and I got to get going, honestly.
Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Yep.
And good luck.
I'm so happy
Thank
I
you.
got to meet everybody and talk. So thank you.
Okay.
And
Thank
we'll
you.
see you around.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Enjoy.
Enjoy a great